That's right.
No, where you? No, I think I want you like all stay.
Swear.
Well, if you don't want to stay, that's fine. But you should stay. See, he's only gonna talk for a couple, like 20 minutes. Do you want to go back down? It's up to you. All right. You should be second seat, first seat. You should get your first, second, your second, third. You should tell them that we're gonna start in 1 minute, like 30 seconds. So.
Okay. Good morning. We're going to start in about 30 seconds. Good morning. I am Myrtle Dorsey, AACC Board Chair and Chancellor of the St. Louis Community College District in Missouri. We are pleased that you have joined us for the NLS closing breakfast. As a courtesy to all attendees, if you could silence your cell phones, we'd appreciate it. I'm going to take a point of privilege and say that the President and CEO of the American Association of Community Colleges was interviewed this morning by Mr. Roland Martin, talking about community colleges, and we're very proud of you, Dr. Bumpus. This year's summit has come at a critical time for the nation. As we work to educate and create jobs for the 21st century economy, community colleges will continue to be on the forefront. We hope you will make full use of the remainder of the day by visiting and advocating at the House, Senate, and executive offices. Our community colleges provide training, education, and opportunities to millions of Americans each year. Our work doesn't end today. We encourage you to advocate for the support of community colleges to your state legislators and governors when you return home. At this time, I am pleased to introduce Mr. John Sanders, trustee from John A. Logan College in Illinois.
Thank you, Dr. Dorsey, and good morning. Well, I hope you've all enjoyed the NLS. I hope you were also successful up on the Hill. We've had some wonderful speakers thus far this week, and this morning is no exception. It is with great pleasure for me to introduce today's guest speaker. General Shinseki is a 1965 graduate of West Point and completed 38 years of uniformed service in the U.S. Army, including 2 combat tours in the Republic of Vietnam and service as the Army's Chief of Staff from 1999 to 2003. General Shinseki became the 7th Secretary of Veterans Affairs on January 21st, 2009. Ladies and gentlemen, this is with great pleasure for me to introduce Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Eric Shinseki. Secretary Shinseki, there you are. There you are. Thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for that very kind welcome, and John, thanks for that very kind introduction. Let me also acknowledge others who are here. Roberto Aranga, Chair of your ACCT Executive Committee. Dr. Myrtle Dorsey, Chair of the AACC Executive Committee. Make sure I get those right. Other members of both executive committees, both past and present. Fellow veterans in the room, other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, and I'm very honored to be here. I have one of those offices in Washington, D.C. that has a great view. Well, that's not why I took the job. But every day I get to gaze out of my office window and I face the north portico of the White House. And in the background to it, I can see the Washington Monument and the Jefferson Memorial. And I share that image with you because it's a rare view of Washington, but it's one that reminds me that we live in a great country and we're truly blessed to be Americans. As President Obama said recently in the State of the Union address, our freedom endures because of the men and women in uniform who defend it. We must serve them as well as they served us. Well, one initiative specifically designed to serve this latest generation of veterans is the new post-9/11 GI Bill, with which I know most of you are familiar, and I'll talk about it in a little bit. Well, my first task as Secretary of Veterans Affairs was to implement that new GI Bill on the fly. Some of us remember the fall of 2009 with great fondness, others with the difficulty of getting youngsters in school on short notice. 173,000 of them in school that fall, all manually, all by hand. We had no automated programs to help us. We've since developed those programs. But that was my first exposure to the new GI Bill, and I felt like a parent again, hoping my children would get into the best schools that they were interested in, hoping they would be happy and confident in their choices, and hoping that the faculty and staff of the schools chosen would be nurturing and supportive, and praying mightily that my children would graduate on time. Well, after 3 years at VA, these veterans are like my children. And like my children, they are special. Nearly 3 million have volunteered for military service since the attacks of 9/11, knowing full well they could be headed to combat, and many of them did. In my book, they are the face of American exceptionalism. That term gets used a lot. But to me, they are the face of American exceptionalism. We have asked a lot of them. They've carried that load magnificently. 10 years is a long time to be at war. But that's what our troops do. They accomplish their missions no matter how difficult or dangerous, without fanfare, without complaint. Our men and women in uniform are some of the brightest, most agile and innovative people I've ever met. And some of you know I've spent decades working with them. In fact, much of the reason I remained in uniform was to work with bright youngsters like these. They have what it takes to succeed, not just in the military, but in school, in business, in any endeavor they choose. A quick story. In the late 1990s, I was commanding the Peace Stabilization Force in Bosnia-Herzegovina, long before Afghanistan and Iraq. It wasn't a hot war, but it had been one. And there were still bad actors and difficult decisions to be resolved. One of those decisions concerned the strategically important town of Brčko. The Serbs desperately wanted Brčko because it linked together the two halves of the Serb Republic, which extend like jaws around the rest of Bosnia-Herzegovina. And as you might expect, the other two former warring factions, the Croats and Muslims, also wanted Brčko, specifically because it would keep the Serb Republic divided. A lot of interest in Brčko. Shortly before the planned announcement on the fate of Brčko, quiet rumors began that the UN High Commissioner might delay his decision to keep the Serbs from taking control of Brčko. The Serbs were adamant. Brčko was sovereign ground, and any decision, even one to delay, would spark an outbreak of hostilities among the three former warring factions, with the Peace Stabilization Force, S4, my unit, caught in the middle. We were headed to crisis, and we began to prepare for the worst. As we approached the scheduled announcement, a young PSYOPs team, psychological operations team, young sergeants, young enlisted soldiers, there are no generals or admirals or colonels on it, took it on their own to go to Brčko to conduct videotape man-in-the-street interviews about a possible delay. So they filmed many subjects, but they narrowed their take down to for a video product that essentially had two bookend interviews. One, an older, grandmotherly-looking woman, and the other was a town drunk. The grandmother said on camera that a delay would be unfortunate, but it was more important to get the right decision for Serbs, and that Serbs should behave themselves so as not to jeopardize the right decision later. The town drunk said under no circumstances should the decision be delayed, and if it were, he and his three buddies who were on camera with him, all of them clearly inebriated early in the day, well, they'd go after S4 and throw all 35,000 or so of us out of country. Well, the decision was to delay, and just before it was announced, these videotapes were hand-delivered to every Serb television station in the country, none of whom had a spot to show following the announcement. And so they were willing to take anything. As the announcement was made, the tape was broadcast all over the Serb Republic. The grandmother's voice of reason carried the day. The town drunk was laughable, as was intended. Not a single incident occurred that night when the delay was announced. Everyone stayed at home, including the town drunks. Well, that PSYOPs team saved us a fight, and that's the point of this story. They saved us a fight. They were dealing in uncertainty, working under time pressures, highly creative, exercising initiative, determined in convincing some very suspicious Serb television stations to take their videotapes. That's the kind of agile creativity you can expect from these young veterans. Over 316,000 good people come to work every day at VA. 1/3 of them, over 100,000, are veterans. The courage, determination, initiative, perseverance, and leadership they demonstrated in uniform continue to define their performance. They enable our successes. We have increased our veteran employment goal to 40%. We intend to meet it. Now, most people see VA as a large healthcare provider, and for the most part, that's true. The largest integrated healthcare system in the country, serving 8.4 million veterans in our 152 medical centers, our 800 some odd community-based outpatient clinics, our 300 vet centers, and even mobile and outreach clinics that go out to the most remote and rural areas where veterans choose to live. But here's what's also true about VA. We provide compensation and pension benefits for nearly 4.2 million veterans, about 10% of whom are 100% disabled. Life insurance covering 7.1 million active duty service members and enrolled veterans at a 95% customer satisfaction rating. Home mortgages that guarantee over 1.5 million service member and active and veteran loans with the nation's lowest foreclosure rates, and the only zero-down financial arrangement in the country. Burial honors for nearly 120,000 heroes and eligible family members in our 131 national cemeteries, befitting their service to our nation. And educational assistance of $10 billion annually, second only to the Department of Education. We look like a Fortune 15 entity, and our veteran-centric workforce has been largely responsible for our successes. Nearly 3/4 of our cemetery employees are veterans, and for the past 10 years they've been the top-rated public or private organization in customer satisfaction in the country, hands down, according to the American Customer Satisfaction Index performed by the University of Michigan, outperforming Google, Lexus, Apple, all the rest. Now you might ask, why would we focus on performance in burial operations? Well, if you live by the philosophy that you're going to have to get it right, and you will get it right every day on the worst day in a family's life, it has to be perfect